Just waiting till I get the cue. Yes, we are live. Good morning, everyone. I feel like I haven't talked yet, so I'm sorry for like the man voice going on here, but my name is Sarah Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am here today. I actually lost track of the days of the world because normally I do coffee and questions towards the end of the month, like the last day of the month, and it is the second of the month. And so somewhere in there, I lost a few days, but I am here today to answer all of your questions live. So if you haven't been to my channel before, maybe you haven't seen this series, I do a series called Coffee and Questions once a month at the end of the month / beginning of the next month. And I answer your questions from Instagram and then from previous YouTube comments. And if you're here live, then I may actually answer your question truly live. So sometimes they're live, sometimes they're not. But the goal is for me to be able to connect with you and answer your questions because I know, and one of the things I say is flex and flow. You're going to hear me say that at the end because I always say that with the idea that labor and birth and parenting and life is flexible, that we need to be able to pick up what we can control and let go of the rest. And with that, labor and birth is also very unpredictable. And so you can sometimes anticipate the way things will go, and then a lot of times it goes differently. And therefore, even when I'm teaching this education, there's an element of like, I'm generalizing for like all of you all over the world, no matter what your birth environment, no matter what your preference is, who your doctor is. And there's a lot of ways that we can adjust and be flexible and go with the flow. So that's why Coffee and Questions. All right. So if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe down below. I would love it if you shared this with a friend, shared with your mommy groups, with anybody you know that's pregnant or having a baby or had a baby that you think that would benefit from this education that I offer here. So subscribe. The other thing is Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, and you have an Instagram, head over to Instagram and make sure you follow Bundle Birth. I'm guessing that a lot of you that are here probably follow me on Bundle Birth because I give all the updates, all the things. I'm on there giving supplemental information, talking about different things over on Bundle Birth. So make sure you do that. And also, I have a surprise coming on Monday that you are not going to want to miss. And it is happening. It'll be launched here and then it will be taking place over on Instagram. So if you follow my stories, I did give a sneak peek a couple of days ago, but I'm so excited about it. Coming Monday, stay tuned, set your alarms because there's something exciting coming in celebration of you guys. Okay. So without further ado, I have some of your questions from YouTube comments. Actually, this time around, there were more YouTube comments that I found with questions in them than the poll on Instagram. Usually on Instagram, I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so many questions. How am I ever going to answer them all? And there wasn't as many this time, which honestly makes my job a lot easier. But I have saved a ton of them from YouTube. So I'm going to start from YouTube and answer your questions there. I will answer some from the poll on Instagram, and then I'm going to look on your little side comments here, and I can see them over here. So Lord, help me being able to scroll. Hi, Germany. Oh my gosh, that's so fun. And so I will look at your questions on the side at the end of all of that. Okay. So let's start with, all right. So this actually comes from How to Have a Successful VBAC. If you are a previous cesarean mama, I have a good number of videos on VBAC. I think there's a 2-part VBAC series on here. I also have a VBAC class. So if you haven't taken my VBAC class, honestly, what's on YouTube is just totally grazing the surface of what we can talk about and get into all the nitty gritty, how to navigate that with your provider. And so actually, that's a piece of my recommendation for this one. But let me read this question from Maria Hernandez. She says, what if my provider insists on having a C-section if I already had a VBAC? So, and this, I could get into this for a very long time, but I'm going to try to keep it short. If you've had a VBAC, meaning you've had a vaginal birth after you've had a cesarean, your chance of having another successful VBAC goes up. Your chance of complications goes down. You have what we call a proven pelvis. Maybe you've heard me say that before, that if you've passed a baby through your pelvis, we know that a human being can fit through your pelvis. And so I would ask why, because if there's like an actual medical indication that makes this pregnancy more complicated or it eliminates the option of a vaginal birth, then I would ask that to your provider, especially for any of you who maybe your provider's insisting on a C-section. You have the right to ask questions about that and understand why they're making that suggestion. And so ask the question, why? Why are all of the risks of a C-section or a cesarean birth outweighing the risks of pursuing a vaginal birth? And if you haven't seen my risks versus benefits of a C-section versus vaginal birth, that video is legit a class. Like, it's like 40 minutes. It gets into all the details. I went totally out of control a little bit on that information, but it truly is, to me, what looks like a real informed consent about C-section versus vaginal delivery risks. Okay, so make sure you check out that video. So I would ask, is the actual true risk, or is this just because I'm a VBAC? And if it is, then I would really push the issue. If you truly want a VBAC, it may just be a provider preference, and you may need to find another provider that's going to support you through that VBAC. But I would want to make sure that there is not any other risk that's going on that is kind of going to make the C-section less risky than a vaginal birth. I'm like, ugh. Okay. All right. So this comes from Champagne and Questions, which was August 2020. Lindsay Olivia 12 says, looking for an answer in the next Coffee and Questions, I caught you. She says, I'm 6 weeks postpartum and on a wonderful breastfeeding journey with my baby girl. I'm finally cleared to get my body moving again, specifically running, and I'm wondering what I need to consider when getting back into exercising with breastfeeding. Calorie intake? Will it affect my supply? Help. How many of you, and give me a thumbs up or a hand up emoji if you saw the YouTube live that I did yesterday with Sarah from Juna Moms, the app, the exercise app. So we actually did answer this question. She's an exercise specialist. She has a very successful, amazing platform app that is for postpartum, prenatal, and trying to conceive exercise. And so the answer to this question is that as long as you are taking in enough calories, exercise really shouldn't affect your supply. But a lot of times when you add exercise in, or you're cleared to exercise, which, by the way, if you watch that live, you will also learn that you can technically be doing some things to tone your body and to get blood to the areas that need to go there earlier than 6 weeks. Flex and flow on that one. So check out that live and check in with your doctor. But for this specific one, a lot of times when you start exercising, you're really working at getting off that baby weight. Remember that you burn extra calories when you breastfeed. And so you're losing calories that way. Then you add the calorie deficit of all the exercising that you're doing, and your body needs to replenish its own stores in order to make enough milk. One of the good comparisons that I give is that when you're pregnant, your body will always prioritize your baby. So if you're not eating enough calories, it's going to pull. I pull from my fat stores. I was literally thinking about my cheeks. I'm like, please pull from my cheeks. If I gain any weight, you'll see it in my face, before you'll see it anywhere else. So your body's going to pull from the fat stores anywhere in your body to fuel your baby while you're pregnant. Once you're not pregnant anymore, your body's like, oh, no, I'm not growing a human anymore. I am just making milk, which is just as important, but it's not quite as much of a survival skill. I'm going to work at making mom survive before I make milk. And so if there's too much of a calorie deficit, then you may see a drop in your milk supply when you start exercising. And so that's where it would be adding in some healthy calories, not your processed foods, not your high sugar foods, high carb foods, some lean proteins, some fruits and vegetables to add in those extra calories to fuel your body to recover, and then also fuel yourself to make the milk. It's like, imagine your breast milk is like a little factory in there, right? And you need fuel to make the factory work. You need electricity, you need manpower, you need whatever else you need. And I don't run a factory, so I don't really know, but basically you need enough resources to fuel the factory. And if you don't have enough resources on board, which for you would be calories, then your body's milk supply is going to suffer. Okay. So I love that question. And then if you want more about that, then head on over to that live yesterday with Sarah from Juna Moms. Okay. This is a heavy hitter one, okay? So I sort of talk about this in my childbirth class. If you haven't taken a childbirth class, I got off the phone on a one-on-one call yesterday with somebody on the East Coast, and she was like, a hospital's closed, and with COVID and everything, there's just no access to childbirth classes. And by the way, I have all the classes you need on my website. So if you haven't taken one, head on over there. My suggestion, if you're just getting started, would be the all class bundle. It includes the labor prep class, the medical interventions class, and then coping with labor. And that is like plenty to get you going, because I do sort of meaning I talk about all the things in that class, but one of the supplements to that would be the very popular question. This comes from Charlene Toe. She says, can I know if having an epidural will have aftermath side effects such as backache and stuff? So I talk about all the side effects of an epidural in the medical interventions class, but specific to backache, because this is a huge concern for people. In fact, it may be the only concern you have for why you would want to avoid an epidural. And if you haven't seen my Should I Get an Epidural or Not video, head over to there and add that to your list. I'm about to reference like a ton of videos because I have so much content on here and I think it's hard to weed through because there's just so much information. So add to your list, should I get an epidural or not? Because the idea for me is I don't want you to have trauma in your labor. And an epidural sometimes can be a tool to help you have that healthy birth memory equaling your mental health. Okay. So we care about your mental health. I say there's nothing worth your mental health. So along those lines, one of the concerns for people are backache. And so if this is your concern, let me address it. So when they place the epidural, it is in like your middle back, okay? And in the past, there's a few different theories on this, and there may be more out there, but usually how I like to describe it is that when you're pregnant, you have this growing uterus that's weighing extra weight. You have added blood flow, you have amniotic fluid, you have a placenta, you have a baby, and that's a ton of strain on your body. And normally our bodies are set up to be equilibrated. Is that a word? Like they're supposed to be equal, right? But when you get that belly on the front, your body is naturally going to kind of try to tip forward. That's why balance is so important and why that exercise is so important in pregnancy, to be able to stabilize your bodies, because you have all this extra stress of the added weight of the pregnancy. But guess where that stress leads to? It leads to back strain or back pressure, or it's going to put stress on the same place where they place the epidural. And so most of the time, we actually don't see that it causes long-term back pain. Now, clearly, anytime you're making any kind of puncture in the body, like if I start an IV, or I step on a nail, or I get a C-section, or I have surgery anywhere else, there's risk for scar tissue, right? And that scar tissue can form and cause like tension in the area. It may cause some discomfort, and any scar can technically hurt. The size of the epidural insertion compared to like anything else you do is literally, I have a bobby pin here. It's like not even the size of a bobby pin, okay? It is so small. So you're not even really getting a scar to be able to cause that much pain. All right. So most of the time, what we see is that the back pain that people associate with an epidural is actually more because of the weight of pregnancy, and then leaning over for breastfeeding, and then lifting your child, and poor posture and poor body mechanics. And people, of course, have connected the two because it's like, oh, why does my back hurt there? Ooh, that's kind of new. And all of a sudden you go from super weighted down from your big, heavy pregnancy, and then to like, oh, I'm back to normal. It's a lot of strain on your back. And then obviously like all the body mechanics of having a baby. And so people have made that association, but there really isn't much research to back it up. So back pain postpartum because of an epidural, there are people that get epidurals for other things other than labor, and they don't have back pain either. The other one is cold sensation. Maybe in the past, like your mom or your aunt or something complains of like a like cold, kind of painful sensation in the epidural site. And what I have learned, again, like I would hold loosely to this information because I can't think of a study to back it up, but off the top of my head, one of our very prominent anesthesiologists at one of my hospitals would talk about how in the past that there was a preservative that they used in the epidural medication that would cause that sensation, and they no longer use that. Epidurals have been shifting and changing over the last even 10 years of my career. When I was in nursing school, you got an epidural and it wore off. Whereas now an epidural, it doesn't wear off. Like it should be working throughout your entire pregnancy. You can have epidurals for weeks. Not that you'd be in labor for weeks, God forbid. But if you needed to, in theory, you could. And so that's where, as far as that like pain sensation or the cold or whatever, like people get epidurals all the time and it doesn't cause back pain or that like weird sensation. And epidurals have become like so standardized. They're I want to say relatively safe, but in general, they are safe. Again, I talk about all of those risks in my medical interventions class so that you can make a fully informed decision. We have a very long conversation about epidurals. We also have a very long conversation about Pitocin in that class as well. If you want to know what I'm talking about, you can head on over to my How They Induce You in the Hospital video. I am really bad with my titles of my videos, but something like that. You get the idea. All right. Let me plug in my phone because I'm dying, although my charger's over there. So I guess we'll just hope that I don't die. All right. So this is a really good question, actually. So Just a Human Being says, this comes from my delayed cord clamping video. She or he says, even for babies who need resuscitation, it's recommended to bring the equipment to the baby rather than cut the cord to bring the baby to equipment. So, and I made this is just totally like a side comment because I thought it was an interesting observation, and they're absolutely right that the recommendation, if your baby needs resuscitation, what does that mean? They're having trouble breathing, that maybe they swallowed some amniotic fluid. By swallowed, I mean breathed in the amniotic fluid, or XYZ reason that they're like, they don't come out all perked up like, I'm in the world. And they're like, I don't really want to be here. Then sometimes they do need to resuscitate your baby. And that's why you deliver in an environment with providers that can provide what we call neonatal resuscitation. And so most of the time, I say most of the time, meaning like I've literally never seen it done. But if your baby were to come out needing resuscitation or help, then they would have to clamp and cut the cord and bring the baby to the little baby bed warmer in the room at the bedside, doing all of that. Now, mind you, I'm also speaking to the United States, what they do in other countries, flex and flow, but in general, this is kind of the way that things go. So they would do that in the room and stabilize your baby. What does that mean? Give oxygen, help stimulate them, help them to cry, listen to their lungs, make sure their pulse is good and their heart is beating. And so the idea with delayed cord clamping and why this is on this video is that ideally baby comes out, goes skin to skin, and then the cord is still connected. So baby's technically still getting oxygen from the umbilical cord until it's clamped. And so the Neonatal Resuscitation organization that teaches that says that if the baby needs help, to do it on mom. In reality, that's just not the way that people are doing it. It's very hard to visualize the baby. It's hard to do a solid assessment, especially once the cord is cut. If the cord is not cut or clamped, then in theory, they need to begin resuscitation at mom. But if truly your baby needs like legit resuscitation, chest compressions, oxygen, like worst case scenario style, they are not going to be as effective as being skin to skin on mom. And that's where like risk benefit wise, like if they need oxygen and survival, like a pulse versus skin to skin, I'm sorry, that's always going to trump the other from the medical perspective. Obviously, like in theory, you have a choice, but my guess is that you probably want your baby to be okay. And so if you want the care team to be able to give the most accurate, most effective level of care in that scenario, then the baby's going to need to go to the baby warmer and be separated, not on your skin, not separated in separate rooms necessarily yet, but in the room with the care team that can really take care of them. Now, if your baby's not breathing or has a pulse and is just kind of like, or kind of floppy or not quite the color isn't exactly what we want, then yeah, neonatal resuscitation, a lot of times, like they'll rub your baby, they may give oxygen, they may listen to the lungs, they may even suction. I've never seen suctioning done on mom, but not to say it can't happen. Some of those minor resuscitative efforts can happen on mom, but truly the baby really does need to be taken. And that is somewhat my opinion and not totally what NRP says, but in practice, I guarantee you, if you talk to a doctor, a pediatrician, neonatologist, or a nurse, we're going to be like, no, I can't give adequate chest compressions on mom at all. And that's not what's recommended. Okay. So, but I love that comment because you're absolutely right that is what the books say. All right. Okay. Kamal Shah says, I regularly watch your videos. I have one question. I'm having a baby after a long time, almost 10 years, And now I'm so worried about normal natural birth. What am I supposed to do for a normal natural birth? So that's a super general question. But what I want to address is the 10-year gap. So if you have not had a baby in 10 years, and I would say anything more than 5, that's a solid gap between pregnancies, but you have a proven pelvis. And so we know that the baby can fit through your pelvis. Now, every pregnancy, different baby, different size, different position, different placenta. There are differences. So just because you had a perfect blotted off, fill in the blank birth experience with your first doesn't mean that it will be totally the same for your second. In fact, I would say don't expect it to be the same for your second. But if there's been that gap, my one kind of just nugget of wisdom here is to expect it to go kind of like a first-time mom again. And the longer your gap, that the more that looks like that. Now, it is a little bit of a wild card where like it could be really fast. It could be more like a first-time mom. But in general, the criteria I give for how long labor takes for a first-time mom, it's kind of like your body's like, all right, I've healed, I've recovered, I've kind of forgotten. And so I need to like get back into the swing of things. Okay. So meaning it will probably take you a little bit longer than it would a second-time mom who just had a baby like 2 years ago. Okay. All right. So this comes from how they induce labor in the hospital, what to expect. Darlene Day says, can you be given any of these induction medications and then sent home? This is a really good question. So actually, I would say that since I made that video, there is some new developments in allowing people to go home with a Foley balloon. So if you haven't seen that video, check out that video because I'm not going to explain it here what a Foley balloon is. But that may be an option for you. If you're 1 centimeter dilated, you can talk to your provider about the option of placing a Foley balloon in the office and then going home and coming back to the hospital once the Foley balloon comes out. And so that has been proven to be a safe and effective way. It's just a matter of, does your doctor do it? Is it a part of the hospital policy protocol? There may be a way to do that. Otherwise, medications across the board, they're not going to give you medications and send you home. It's just there's side effects with medications. You need to be monitored. We want to make sure the baby's okay. And so in general, expect if you are induced, you are in the hospital the entire time. Okay. Okay. I love this one too. This is a breastfeeding question. I hope my phone doesn't die. If it does, I'm going to grab my charger. I know this is live, but like it's live. So it is what it is. Let me just grab my charger. Okay. That was fast. Better safe than sorry. All right. So, okay, so this comes from the All About Breastfeeding live I did on Monday with Goldilocks. If you haven't checked that one out, oh my goodness, it's like an hour of just like hour of power. That's what I call them. I'm gonna have him back and be like, you're the hour of power. So make sure you check out that video because there's so much information in that. So Nessa Riggs says, I'm 20 weeks pregnant now. I already saw a little bit of colostrum, which is great. Colostrum is just the first type of juicy, amazing milk. It is milk, okay? I already saw a little bit of colostrum, which is great. I would love to collect and maybe hand express a little before my baby's arrival because I'm going to have a repeat C-section. But I'm high risk for preterm labor, actually starting progesterone shots this week. And so my question is, should I hand express and collect colostrum or should I not due to the risk of preterm labor? She is one educated woman. I love it. So the reason for this is that when the breasts are stimulated, it can cause contractions. And so my first and foremost, of course, as always, is check in with your provider. That is a great question for your doctor who knows you best, who knows what your risks are. And so check in with them. In general, I would say for the masses, just to talk about it, I would say, honestly, risk benefit, I'd rather you not go into preterm labor. And honestly, like, is nipple stimulation or hand expressing or pumping going to cause you to go into labor? If it does, my script is like, you were meant to go into labor and it just was that added little boost to get you in. Because as you know, and how many of us have been there, that you have done all the things in the world and you're still not in labor. So if it were that easy, then everyone would do it and it would work. So in general, the risk is very low, but if you do have a history of a preterm birth, meaning you've had a baby before 37 weeks, and usually I would say especially before 35 weeks, then you are at higher risk of having a preterm baby again. And so I would say, it probably, first of all, it's not necessary to pump, to express colostrum, to save milk before you have a baby. All right. So do not stress about that. Now, there are some that do suggest that. There are some lactation consultants, there are some pediatricians, there are some other random people out there that are going to tell you to do that. And I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think if you do see milk there, you may be able to collect some drops and have that on store. I know that my sister actually did. We saved I think maybe 1.5 mLs. P.S. 1.5 mLs is absolutely nothing. Okay. It's nothing. And so with that, don't expect to see a lot, but if you have it, make sure you have little syringes or something. And usually I suggest 1 milliliter syringes. You can get these online. I'll link them on my Amazon list, which will be in the description box after this. But that you'd save them and throw them in the freezer so you have them in case you have a milk supply issue or your baby's sort of jaundiced or you're worried about anything in the beginning. You can always supplement your baby and give that to your baby because your baby does not need a lot in the beginning. It really just needs drops to get it started. Okay. So for peace of mind, you may want to do that, but honestly, you don't have to. Okay. You don't have to do anything to prep your body for breastfeeding. Your body does not know to release the milk until the placenta is delivered. And so it's not expected at all to see any milk until the placenta's out. Okay. So please don't stress about this. And I would say for Nessa that you should just check in with your doctor and see if that's a thing. If you want to do it and you have colostrum, absolutely. Why not? You have a little bit of a stash to make you feel like peace of mind, but otherwise it's probably not totally necessary. Okay. I love this. Kay Courtney from the same video on breastfeeding. She says, if you bottle feed breast milk, does that still provide all the benefits of breastfeeding? Yes. Okay. So this is where when we say breastfeeding, I think especially for pumping mamas, and I could do better at this of speaking in a way that makes people feel more empowered that you are breastfeeding, even if you're pumping breast milk and giving it in a bottle. We're more talking about breastfeeding and formula feeding. And so by breastfeeding, if the baby's getting breast milk, they're getting all the juicy goodness of all of that breast milk. The only difference is the sort of hormonal component of that oxytocin connection from baby being latched on the breast and you bonding with them in that way. But bonding can happen in a lot of other ways, okay? Doing skin to skin, holding, looking into each other's eyes, infant massage, all of that. And so I would say don't worry about it. And yes, your baby's getting all the benefits of the breast milk. Okay. I love this. All right. So this is a big one. And this one, if you're a nurse, I don't know if you guys know this. This is really exciting. Something that has come out of bundle birth in the last 2 or 3 months is we have launched a nursing mentorship for labor and delivery nurses. And this has been a dream of mine since the very beginning. I've always trained nurses. I've precepted nurses. I've had nursing students. I've been a nurse mentor. I've done nurse education. So obviously that's a huge passion of mine. And so one of the things I've said to you is that I can tell you all the things, all the options. You can be the most educated in the world and you hop into the hospital and your nurse is like, huh? No. And you come up against a lot of pushback. And so if we're really going to make a difference in the world of obstetrics, and as we know, if you're in the United States, we don't have the best stats on obstetrics. We have a lot of birth trauma and a lot of issues with our medical system. And so Bundle Birth's goal, my company's goal, me and Justine at this point are going to change that. And we're going to do everything we can for your sake to really make a difference in the world of obstetrics. And one of the ways we've done that is launched a completely sold out nursing mentorship. And so one of the things we're going to talk about, and actually I'm going to give a shameless plug. If you had a poor experience in the hospital, or you were told something by a medical provider that maybe didn't feel good, wasn't therapeutic, that maybe caused trauma, we want to hear about it because we're going to use it as teaching for these new nurses that are going through this mentorship and into the future. So you can comment down below, send me a DM on Instagram. If you want to record your story, let me know. We will use it in this training. And so I'm really looking to you guys because it's hard to understand the patient experience when this is something you do day in and day out. So that's my little shameless plug. But along those lines is this question. This is going to be an anonymous post. So any advice on trust issues with medical staff? I get super nervous at hospitals. My blood pressure goes way up and I'm afraid to get pregnant again because I'd have to have a hospital birth with a previous C-section, even though I really want a second baby. Any advice on good ways to ask for or indicate that you need more support or time? Whew, this is a huge passion of mine, okay? First and foremost, and this actually comes from literally the first module we teach nurses, is you have to know what your rights are. And so there's a patient bill of rights that you can just Google. I will link it down below after this live stream to understand what are your rights as a patient. And honestly, if you want me to do a YouTube video on this and talk through each one, I absolutely will because I'm so passionate about this, that you are not in jail, you are not sick, you have the right to self-determination. And what does that mean? To determine for yourself the outcome of what happens to your body, to decide for yourself who touches you, who cares for you, what you do and don't do. Now, that's one thing. But from the medical perspective, of course, I have to think nurse brain is that our job from the medical side is to make sure that you can make educated, wise decisions and not ones out of fear and not ones just because you don't like the idea when potentially you're putting you or your baby at risk. And so the medical side is there to help you weigh that risk. Whereas for you, you take that information, you internalize it, and ultimately you're grown, you're wise, you're capable, and you can make those decisions for yourself. But unfortunately, this day and age, that's not entirely always the way that providers are approaching the scenario. And that's not really the vibe that you get a lot of times. And I think there's a lot of intimidation with the hospital. Let me know if you're intimidated by the hospital. I want to know that too. And so, trust issues with the medical staff, of course, they're new. I would say first and foremost, to start with a baseline of trust. Okay. I can tell you, even from my perspective of working in multiple hospitals, that in general, people don't get into medicine because they want to hurt people. They get into medicine because they want to help them. And so I think starting with giving the benefit of the doubt versus saying, I don't trust you, is going to help your case ultimately. Now, there are deposits in trust. This comes from Brene Brown. If you haven't read any of her stuff, she's the best. She has a podcast, listen to her. But the idea with trust is that you give them benefit of the doubt, but in order to fully trust, they have to make deposits into that cup. And they need to do things that make you go, oh, thank you. Oh, that makes me feel amazing. Or, wow, yeah, thank you for considering my needs. Or you really internalized what I told you, that based on that conversation we had before or whatever. And that's going to build trust over time. If you're a medical professional watching, that's asking for permission. That's saying, I would like to check you versus I'm going to check you, and being really gentle with that vaginal exam. We talked about this in the pelvic floor session with the Vagina Whisperer on Tuesday. Check that one out too. There's so much good content up that's come from this week. And so, it's giving you full autonomy over your decisions and your choices. And so that's not always the way it's approached. So first of all, start with a baseline of trust. Second of all, I would encourage you to become educated in your options, in your decisions, and having that super solid baseline of education rather than everything being new. And that's one of the reasons why you're here, which is so amazing of you to care that much, to pour into your body and your pregnancy and your birth. This is your experience. You can do this, and your experience is going to look different than other people's. And that's a lot based on your own decisions, but you can't make those decisions without understanding all the risks, benefits, and alternatives of all the things. And so that's why you watch these YouTube videos, you read your books if you're a reader, but really you take a childbirth class. And why I just so thoroughly believe that if you do the all-class bundle, you will be set up for being able to have those conversations and speak to them through the lens of, I understand enough, and you're not spending 3 hours on a childbirth class at the bedside when you could really be building off of that information to really know more, do better, and be more in control of your delivery. So take a childbirth class and then ask for time and support and say, if you're hearing something, that instead of just saying, okay, doctor, say, I don't totally understand this part or whatever. You are entitled to understand everything that's happening in your care. And if you don't, it is your right to ask for that and to get the answers. So maybe you don't understand something, then it would be, hey, doctor, I just don't totally understand. Maybe could you explain it in another way? And I really want to get there so that I can really, truly understand what you're saying. Or teach back. I mean, that's like a classic textbook, like teaching tactic. But the idea would be, and I literally just did this on a support call with one of my vendors. And I was like, okay, so this is what I'm hearing you say. And reiterating and reteaching back and saying, I'm hearing you say that I need a C-section because this happened. And if I don't do it, this is the risk. If I do it, this is the risk. Is that right? And they'll be like, well, yeah, but also I'd add blah, blah, blah. And you're going to get more information that way. The other thing is just saying, can I wait? Can I wait? Especially if they're talking about pushing interventions or a C-section or whatever, it's can I wait? And what's the risk to waiting? Because sometimes you'll learn in my medical interventions class too, that any kind of medical thing may actually be tools to help you get a vaginal birth. And without it, the number of times I've been in scenarios, even with clients where I'm like, okay, you can wait, you can do whatever you want, but understand that if you were to get some Pitocin, you're setting yourself up for more chance of a vaginal birth than really setting yourself up for a C-section. And you want to know, if you really want a vaginal birth, you want to know if you're setting yourself up for a C-section, hold on. No. And so obviously this is a very complicated conversation. There's so many different scenarios that could come up in this. This is not mutually exclusive based on the scenarios I just gave you. But in general, ask for more time. Ask more questions and say, I don't totally understand. Could you explain it again? And then use that teach back method to really help you to connect with your provider, your care team, etc. Okay. All right. Let me just scroll through your questions because those of you that have been here the whole time, I want to make sure that you're taken care of as well. Okay. So Kaylee Price, I see you. All right. She says, babies that don't gain weight, is it switching to formula the only option? So I would need to know so much more about this question. But in general, if your baby isn't gaining weight, that can be an indicator that your baby's not getting enough volume, enough milk, enough calories. So I would more go to what's going on with your supply. I have a video on how do I make enough milk or making enough milk or how much milk is enough or something about enough. You can Google enough or put it in the search bar with my name and you'll probably find it. Okay. Or go to the breastfeeding playlist because I am saving them all in playlists to help you categorize. But basically I would say, let's look at why maybe you're not producing quite as much to make your baby or help your baby gain weight. Now, if you're truly not producing enough or there really truly is a weight gain issue, then formula is a tool to help your baby get enough calories while you get over that hump of figuring out what's happening in your body and figuring out your milk supply. There are so many things that affect your milk supply. One of the ones I already mentioned was calories. Are you taking in enough calories? What's your stress level? How's your sleep? How's your lifestyle? Are you, and I would say that kind of goes along with stress, but the way I think about this is because I have a client right now that is in a very stressful scenario and she's struggling with milk supply. And I'm like, it's because you're having so much stress in your life. Give yourself a break, but the other thing is that what are you eating? How much caffeine are you taking in? Do you have any medications on board? Do you have any history? Have you breastfed before? And that's where I would guide you to a lactation specialist to be able to help you with that. Now, a lot of times your pediatrician's office will have a lactation consultant on staff that can work with you. But if you haven't been working with a specialist, 100% you need to be working with a specialist because breastfeeding issues are so specific to each person. It's the same thing I would say with pelvic floor, that you really should be seeing a pelvic floor therapist as well, because we can teach you generalized, but your body is so much more specific and your lifestyle and all of that. And so formula can be a tool. And if you're not making enough right now, it doesn't mean you won't make enough forever, but it may help you to get over that hump for weight gain. Okay. Okay. Camo Jello to, I'm not even going to try because I'm going to butcher it. I'm so sorry, but you have a beautiful name. Says, I'm 39 weeks and Lord, I'm tired of being pregnant. Please, how can I induce labor at home? I actually have multiple videos on that. So you can head on over to my How to Induce Labor Naturally video. And then the How to Engage the Baby video. Those are going to be the two videos that I recommend for you. Now, the other thing I will say to you, all of you guys who are so tired of being pregnant, you're over it, you've tried all the things, you're like, please get this baby out of me. Honestly, the number one thing I would say is to just accept that you're going to be pregnant forever and let go, because there's so much of a psychological side. And actually, I do have a video on this too, on I've done all the things. How do I get myself into labor, like whatever? And my answer to you is let go. That the moment you let go, that a lot of times that's the hump you need to get over getting into labor. You will not be pregnant forever. And I know it feels like forever, especially once you hit your due date. It's like every single day is like ridiculously long. And so take a deep breath, do some self-care, let go, say, you know what, what's going to happen is going to happen. I'm trusting that my body made this baby. It's going to birth this baby how it needs to. Okay. And that will probably help you. All right. I just found out that Chrissy B, I'm just found out that I'm pregnant and I'm so exhausted. How can I get enough energy without drinking too much caffeine? This is where, let me just tell you, for those of you, and actually comment in the comment box and let everyone know, the hardest part about the first trimester is the exhaustion. And so your body is working so hard, and everybody, and I say loosely everybody because I never say never, never say always, but almost everybody is exhausted in the first trimester. That is 100% normal. And honestly, caffeine may not help you. So obviously check in with your doctor if they'll let you have caffeine. The basic recommendation is no more than 200 milligrams a day. And honestly, in the first trimester, I usually say like go as clean diet as possible. That's like the most kind of critical time in your pregnancy for any kind of substances or medications or whatnot. And I would just say rest. And you know what? And especially like work, do what you can, limit your time and give yourself so much grace to just slow down and be okay slowing down, because that is kind of just a part of the first trimester of pregnancy. All right, Dee Dee Dawson says, if you've hemorrhaged after birth, is there a chance you could hemorrhage again with your next birth? This is going to be a flex and flow. This is going to be a flex and flow answer. So if you've hemorrhaged in the past, meaning you've had too much blood loss, yes, you are at higher risk for doing it again. It is one of the things that's like on our checklist as nurses that we're like, okay, noted, but that also doesn't mean you will again. And so that's where what I would tell you is to make sure you're taking your iron supplements, or that you're not anemic going into labor, and that you tell your nurses that you hemorrhage with your first, so they'll be on high alert. And then it's a flex and flow. There's not too much you can be doing ahead of time to necessarily prevent that. Maybe avoiding an induction if possible, because the longer you're on Pitocin, the higher your risk for a postpartum hemorrhage. But that's going to be a case-by-case scenario. And there may be scenarios where that induction does outweigh the risk of potential hemorrhage, you know? So I would say let it go and just make sure that your care team knows. Rihanna Faithima says, hi, Sarah, please tell us about how likely it is to have a VBAC with twins. So could it happen? 100%. My biggest concern for you would be whether or not you find a provider that will attempt a VBAC with twins. Your uterus is extra distended, more pressure on that scar. Most providers are going to be pretty concerned about that uterine rupture. And even with twins, you are already at higher risk for a C-section. So I would say that's 100% based on a provider that will do it. Can it happen? Of course it can. I would say it's lower chance than would be somebody who has one baby in there, but talk to your provider about it. All right. I'm looking through so many of your questions. You guys are the best. Give me a second. Oh, Brittany Davenport says, we got the all-class bundle and it's been awesome. Yay. And you can watch them several times before birth. All right. Oh, you guys are the best. Okay, weight loss video is coming. That's on my queue for like the next couple of months. For you with postpartum weight loss, I will be doing a video on, but basically it's going to be exercise and diet, but there's some specific stuff to that. So that like requires a whole video. All right. Emily Peterson says, have any of you moms on here used legendary milk products? If so, what did you like? Okay. And actually there's a question from Instagram on here that asked about supplements for breastfeeding. I love legendary milk products. I recommend them to my clients. My sister used them. In general, I think they're awesome based on your needs. You should continue taking your prenatal vitamin. If you have one, my favorite prenatal vitamins are by Ritual. I will link them down below. And I know there was a wait list and now they're back to shipping. Their manufacturing came back. So I think you can get them. Prenatal vitamin, continue taking that or some sort of women's multivitamin. You should be taking a probiotic if you're breastfeeding. That's going to help with your milk supply. And then my favorite other supplement is sunflower lecithin. It helps with clogged milk ducts because clogged milk ducts can turn into engorgement, can turn into mastitis, and a whole slew of other issues. And so those would be the ones off the top of my head, but I love them. I might find a promo code for you. In fact, I think I do have a promo code, so I don't know it off the top of my head. So after this is posted, I'll go in and change the description box and you can check out the description box. Jade for Evs says, what's the percentage of, there's a fly or there's a bug. There was one in my other video too. What's the percentage of uterine rupture with a VBAC? It's less than 1% after one C-section. Oh, I love it. Christine Anne Marie says, if I ordered your Coping with Labor class last year, will I need to order it again for my birth in a couple of months, or will I still have access to it? You still have access, girl. So it is lifetime access. Now, the PDF downloads, for those of you that have purchased or will, the PDF downloads expire in a month, but save the PDF and then the code and that you get and the password will work forever for you. If you have an issue, just email me. All right. Okay. Life with Radiance. I like this one. Hello. I love you. I love you too. I'm 20 weeks pregnant and feeling my baby move can feel scary to me. How many of you feel that? That's totally real. Any advice I can do to ease my nerves when I feel the baby move? Okay. So honestly, initially, it can feel really weird. Second of all, you're going to get used to it. It's going to become second nature for you. And third of all, I want you to turn your mindset into this actually is my baby's little like, hey, mom, I'm okay. And that is true. Once you start feeling those movements, you really, truly want to be feeling them regularly throughout the rest of your pregnancy, especially towards the end. If you haven't seen my warning signs for pregnancy video, I talk about movements, fetal movements being one of the indicators that everything's okay. And so think of it as like hey, I'm just letting you know I'm in here. Don't forget about me. I love you and I'm good. Thanks for keeping me alive. that really is truly what it means. Okay. All right. So we have been here for 47 minutes. You guys are the best. I didn't even get to your Instagram questions, which honestly, the Instagram questions were somewhat like there weren't that too many. I don't feel totally bad about it. But I'm always here. So if you have a specific question or you have your own patient scenario and you want to sit down with me and talk it through, most of the time, I'm actually going to suggest that you set up a one-on-one with me. I can help you talk through your birth preferences. I do birth debriefs with people. I answer their questions about trying to conceive. No medical advice, but helping you navigate different scenarios is going to be something that I can offer assistance in. The other thing is obviously those classes are online. I do virtual support and in-person support if you're in Los Angeles, and I'm allowed to because there are certain hospitals here where I'm still not allowed in. Hit me up. Everything you can find at bundlebirth.com. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you head on over to Instagram because we have fun things coming on Monday. So stay tuned. There will be a video posted on Monday that will announce all the fun things that are coming in celebration of 100,000 subscribers. So I wish I could keep answering your questions, but I will be back. So stay tuned on Instagram. I may go live on Instagram in the near future and continue answering your questions. I will be back for more coffee and questions. So feel free to throw them in the comment box down below and I will reference this video for next month's coffee and questions. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon. Bye, guys. Thanks for being here.